morning. Hello, Erica. You've got a crew today. We're going to actually be hearing, as part of our board staff, from Iowa Migrant Movement for Justice, and I think Erica Johnson is going to, founding member of the Iowa Migrant Movement for Justice, is going to get us kicked off and introduce us to some of her staff as you go along. So Erica, you've got a agenda here, so go ahead and jump right in.
Take it away. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, supervisors. Some are new. Lovely to meet you. And as Supervisor McCoy said, my name is Erica Johnson. I'm the founding executive director of Iowa Migrant Movement for Justice. And so we've got a couple of folks here. Not everybody, Lucas couldn't come today, but we've got Susie Tierney, our development director. We've got Barbie Rodriguez, staff attorney, Ann Naffier, who is our co-director of our legal program and managing attorney. Elizabeth Balcarcel, who is a community organizer focusing on rapid response, and Jody Mashik, who is our other co-director of our legal program, who is also what's called a Department of Justice accredited representative. So my job is to give kind of an overview of who we are. Iowa MMJ is an immigrant rights organization here in Des Moines, based in Des Moines, and we serve folks all around the state. We have members that help elect our board of directors and who kind of lead the vision of the organization. And we do two primary things. We provide immigration legal services, and we do advocacy. And what that looks like for us is we help with leadership development, helping immigrants and refugees from around the state learn how the systems in the U.S. work so that they can be active, involved, and civically participating in their communities. Our mission, as it says, is to build a movement for justice led by immigrants and refugees in Iowa by providing high-quality legal services and community empowerment through organizing. So you've got a brochure here that goes through all of that and has some nice pictures for you to look at. And these two pictures here, one of them's taken at one of our immigration legal clinics, the one on the left, where we travel around the state, and we've been serving folks in Polk County in particular, which is what we'll talk most about today, for many years. And then the other one is through a leadership development training that we do every year during the state legislative session, where we teach people about how things work at the State House and sort of how a bill becomes a law, all of that good stuff. Oops. Okay, so really quickly, Iowa MMJ is a relatively new organization, and we're founded on two very old organizations. Well, relatively old. But as you can see, there's a timeline here that I thought it might be helpful to lay out. So in kind of starting on the right, in April 2021, was our first official public launch. And so before that, two organizations kind of came together. So one organization was called Justice for Our Neighbors, and the other one was called American Friends Service Committee. And those two organizations had been in Iowa serving immigrants and refugees for a very, very long time. American Friends Service Committee started offering immigration legal services and doing advocacy in 1995. And then Iowa Justice for Our Neighbors began offering immigration legal services in 1990, the year 2000. So those are both faith-based organizations. AFSC is a Quaker international organization that's over 100 years old and has offices all around the world. And the other one, Justice for Our Neighbors, is a ministry of the United Methodist Church. And they have offices all around the country offering immigration legal services. Those two organizations had worked together for a long time. We'd hosted legal clinics around the state for a very long time and worked really well together, and we just thought maybe we can be stronger together, stop competing for resources, and so we joined forces in 2020 was our sort of official launch. We got everything filed with the government and had our first board meetings.
So the two that joined forces were the United Methodists and the Quaker organization.
You got it. Yep.
Joining together. And what is the new entity then called?
Called Iowa MMJ, Iowa Migrant Movement for Justice.
Okay.
Yep. So I think that's everything I had. We're going to try to leave time for questions at the end too, but I'll hand it over now to Elizabeth, who's going to talk a little bit about what we're seeing right now in terms of immigrants and refugees in Polk County.
Sure.
Good morning, Elizabeth Valcarcel. I am the rapid response community organizer in Iowa MNJ, and one of the major tasks that I do is to respond to hotline, and I receive calls from all over the state with constituents that are really concerned about what is happening right now. As you know, the last 10 months, we have, for us now, we have 475 changes in the policies, the immigration policies. So this has been impacting our community really deeply. People are confused, they're scared. As I say, I hear from all over the state, people that has been concerned with their constituents and people in the neighborhood. We have seen, one of the things that I have seen or I have here is that when the officers conduct arrests, they use face mask, they use unmarked vehicles, they use plain clothes, and as of now, people are losing trust in the police and any other entity that is supposed to helping them. So this is creating a high stress in the community because they don't know who really can trust and they can report crimes that are happening to them. So we have heard all those concerns, and with that being said, I think it's very important to be aware that we are losing trust in the community, and we are the ones supposed to be taking care of them. And at this moment, I don't think we want Iowa to become a place that people can live fully and have peace to be around. And I will pass that to my colleague, Barbara. Yeah.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Good morning. My name is Barbara Rodriguez. I'm a staff attorney with Iowa Migrant Movement for Justice, and a large part of my work focuses on representing detained non-citizens, so non-U.S. citizens who are held in county jails in the process of facing their immigration proceedings, their removal proceedings. So I want to talk a little bit about, just to mention the report that you have in front of you outlining ICE, immigration enforcement and detention in the state of Iowa. Just want to flag that you have that. Iowa, of course, has a long history of welcoming immigrants and refugees. Iowa also has a history of cooperating with federal law enforcement when it comes to immigration enforcement. So that report lays out some of the ways that the state has cooperated in the form of activities by the state legislature, state agencies, and engagement between individual counties and federal law enforcement on immigration issues. And then as far as immigration enforcement in Iowa, I want to touch on 4 main approaches that ICE and the Department of Homeland Security have taken in Iowa to enforce immigration priorities. The first way, and I think probably the way that we see most often is in the context of state criminal legal proceedings. So most immigration enforcement in Iowa is happening in the context of individuals who encounter the state criminal legal process. And so that can look like folks who are facing state charges and may then be released pre-trial, being turned over to ICE custody upon release. Or folks who have completed a state sentence. So upon release, if there's an ICE detainer or an ICE hold on that individual, they'll be transferred immediately into immigration custody. It's worth noting that this is true even if charges are for very low-level offenses and even when charges are then dismissed. So the fact that it might have been a low-level or a dismissed charge does not affect whether or not ICE will assume custody of that individual and kick off proceedings with that individual in custody. And in custody in Iowa means within a county jail. The second way that ICE has been enforcing immigration here in Iowa, occasional field arrests. So in Des Moines, we don't see that as often, but there are instances where ICE may target specific individuals for one reason or another, and pursue a field arrest. So not in the context of being released from state custody, but proactively taking custody of an individual. We're also seeing occasional arrests in the context of ICE check-ins. So what is an ICE check-in? These are appointments where certain non-citizens may be required to go to an ICE field office in Des Moines, that's in the federal building here downtown, and literally check in. So these are people who have been given these appointments because ICE has determined that they are low priorities. They do not pose a danger, they do not pose a significant flight risk. So even though they may be in the country unlawfully in some instances, ICE has already determined that it's okay for them to be out of custody, and they just need to check in for the purpose of confirming that they're still here, see if there's been any change of address, any updates on criminal history. And assuming that there's no additional risk, then folks are given a new appointment to check in later. A lot of times these are individuals who are put into removal proceedings upon entry to the country and have since applied for asylum or in the process of seeking some form of relief or normalizing their immigration status. And in a lot of cases, these are individuals who may have removal orders, but for reasons of security, safety, political reasons, the US government is not removing them. And so they're living in Iowa with work permits, with careers, with families, with homes. So that's one other avenue for immigration enforcement in Iowa. Generally, I think we're seeing ICE check-in appointments scheduled on Tuesdays across the state, so here in Des Moines and in Cedar Rapids.
Excuse me just a minute. So,
Yes.
So they know they're here, and whether it's legally or not, and they're allowing them to stay here. So when they do their check-in, how often do they do their check-ins, would you say?
They vary. Some check-in appointments are scheduled on an annual basis. Sometimes folks are sometimes monthly, sometimes every 6 months. It's a case-by-case determination.
Okay.
While we're on pause, how many are under the first one, the post-immigration enforcement happening to the criminal charges?
How many?
Now, how many individuals have you been working with over the last year that are,
So
how many in Iowa, do you know, or how many in Polk County? That's really what.
Perhaps a percentage.
I can,
I'm actually looking for how many individuals are we talking about? Like 30 or 300 or 3,000? I don't know. I don't have a baseline.
I don't have a total number for you. I can say that, for example, at Polk County Jail, I believe the contract allows for 64 beds to be allocated for people in ICE detention. Those specific, that's a head count per day. I think on average, in the last couple of months, the average daily head count for the county jails that are holding for ICE, approximately 300-ish. It's not, and that's detained though. That's not including people who are not detained and have scheduled check-in appointments. And again, to emphasize, people who have scheduled check-in appointments are known to the Department of Homeland Security, and many of them are in the process of normalizing their status.
I'm just, like, you said that there's a criminal charge that makes people aware that they are not here legally, and that puts them into this category 1. And so maybe 300 people in Iowa have been impacted over the year?
Oh, many more than that, many more.
100 in Polk County?
I would say thousands, if thousands in Iowa, and I would welcome my colleagues to.
But who have criminal charges, you said?
Because she said that that's the number one way that that's the number one ICE enforcement.
That has been the primary means of ICE enforcement, and especially out of, in this state.
Yeah, criminal charges, everything from like driving without a
Sure,
license.
yeah, I get it. Because that's how they find them, and they stop them, and
Yeah.
that's how they discover, wait a minute, you don't have the documentation, right?
And
That-
people who are, that are check-in are also held at Polk County Jail too, and they might not be coming through that first, what do I want to say, funnel that Barbie mentioned, through the criminal charges. Makes sense?
Yeah.
No, but go on.
So in terms of that first category and where those interactions happen, anytime somebody is arrested in Iowa, that information is accessible to ICE. so that they can cross-check their own databases. And so in the event that somebody is arrested on whatever kind of charge or booked into a jail, again, on whatever kind of charge, that information is conveyed to ICE. They cross-reference if there's somebody that they think might be subject to removal proceedings. ICE issues a detainer request to the county jail so that whatever happens with that criminal charge, when the individual is released, they are released into ICE custody.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
No, I understand the process. I was just wondering how many people we're talking about. I might not be articulating my question well, but go on.
I think you are, I just don't have a good
Okay.
concrete answer for you. The fourth type of immigration enforcement that we have seen in Iowa in the past, and I would say fortunately have not seen this year, is in the context of workplace raids. And so certainly in past years, I'm sure everybody's familiar with Mount Pleasant and with Postville, and that's something that we are preparing for, but fortunately have not encountered. And then lastly, just want to highlight again the important role that Polk County Jail plays in the context of immigration enforcement in Iowa. Like I said, I believe the contract allows for approximately 64 people to be held on a daily basis for ICE. And that includes people from all across the state. So it's not only people who have been living in Polk County, but folks who might be transferred from other county jails as well. My understanding is that the last few months, they have been at capacity every day. So thank you. I'll pass it over to my colleague, Jody.
Good morning. Thanks for having us here again. I'm Jody Mashik, one of our co-legal directors at Iowa MMJ. So my colleagues have discussed sort of what's been happening, and I'd like to touch a little bit on our response to that. My colleague Ann will discuss sort of the legal service side of things. I'm going to talk a little bit more about some of our work in terms of the advocacy and organizing. So we have really tried to be very intentional about our public education. That's not new. That's something we've always done. But we've really tried to ramp up efforts, and that didn't just start. We have been in this place before, and we were planning long before this year even rolled around to make sure that we can address the needs of our community. So that looks like Know Your Rights presentations. We are trying to be very intentional about making sure we're putting out accurate information. My colleague Elizabeth mentioned that since January of this year, there have been 476 immigration policy changes that have come down the pipeline from the federal government. That is very difficult to keep up with, but we do our best to make sure we're putting out accurate information, to make sure our communities here in Polk County and throughout the state actually understand what's actually going on and how they are affected by these hundreds of policy changes. We are trying to be very intentional about the information we put out on various social media platforms. We put out a weekly email with very specific points of this is what you need to know. These are the things that are important this week. These are actions you can take. We have two of our organizers who are not with us today. They're both named Maria. We have a online program with them, Buenos Dias con las Marias, that is in Spanish to try and reach all of our Spanish-speaking community members so that they also have access to that information that is so vital and important. There is so much false information that is spread, so many rumors that get spread, and we are constantly trying to head those off so people have accurate information. Elizabeth had mentioned briefly our ICE reporting hotline. That is a statewide hotline so that people can use it for a variety of means. Somebody might call and say, I think I saw ICE activity, I'm worried, or my friend, spouse, partner, whatever, was detained. What do I do? So Elizabeth and volunteers are constantly monitoring that hotline so that we can be able to try and figure out how to support people if and when that happens. And people's needs in those situations might be very different. It might mean that they need legal representation, and it might end up with Barbie doing a consultation because she is primarily our person working with detained individuals. But we've also built these community defense and rapid response teams. And again, these are things we've had in the past, but we've really ramped up efforts. These are statewide teams. We also have a vibrant community here in Polk County. And those community defense teams are consist not only of people in our office, obviously, but community members and allies who want to be able to meet the immediate needs and long-term needs of people who are detained, or even their family members who are struggling if they've been detained or if they've been removed from the United States. So we have the community defense teams. Like I said, we do have a robust one in Polk County that's constantly in contact. It consists of different committees that are involved in supporting different needs of our community members or their family members. If they're removed, like I said, or the family members remain back here. We have rapid response teams that is composed of people in our office, some of our legal workers and attorneys, but also other immigration attorneys and some advocates from around the state. Most of us are here in Polk County, however. And we meet regularly. We have a plan in place should a raid happen so that we can respond to that. Even though we haven't had a wide-scale raid in the state of Iowa and Polk County, we do, like I said, have a plan in place, and we have been, in the meantime, trying to respond to some of the other things that have happened around the state. For example, you've probably heard about some of the mass layoffs, especially some of the packing plants. That's due to certain people's status being terminated abruptly and suddenly. And so we've sort of used those as opportunities too to put our plans in motion, even though they're not necessarily a raid. We've been trying to respond to those and provide as much legal advice and counsel as we can so people know their options.
What are their options? I mean, I'm sitting here while you're talking and thinking about this. Okay, so a raid happens or someone's detained and you come in with rapid response. What does that look like?
So it could look a little bit different every time. It's sort of going to depend. And of course, if there is an actual raid that happens, you know, that could be, you know,
Okay, let's
like,
look at a normal person that's detained.
sure. So, okay.
Normal.
If it's a person who was detained, I mean, that might look a little bit different. If somebody, particularly Barbie, if she is available, she'd probably be our first person that we would try to have connect with that person. If they're detained, if it's in Polk County, she might be able to go out there in person. If it's at one of the other county jails in Iowa that does have contracts with ICE, then she might be able to arrange like a telephonic consultation. But of course, with the number of people who are being detained, Barbie doesn't necessarily have the capacity to meet with hundreds of people, right? And so that is concerning because there is a lack of immigration legal service providers, just to begin with, throughout the whole state of Iowa.
Okay, so
And-
that would be part of my question. Like, do you start the immigration process at that point? Do you say, okay, let's file the paperwork and get you here legally? Or do you say, it's time to set up a will and estate for your family that's going to be left behind? Like, I don't even know what the process is.
Yeah, no, these are all really good questions. So, couple different responses to that. First of all, we always, as part of our working with community members, as we talk about safety planning, having plans in place. If this person is detained and they end up being removed from the country, what's going to happen to the U.S. citizen children if they happen to have U.S. citizen children? What is going to happen to your property if you have property? There are all kinds of things that we encourage people to have in place. In terms of how do people start the process, I would probably need at least an hour and a half to talk about that. We do.
I won't appreciate that.
What's that?
My colleagues wouldn't appreciate
Yeah, no, but we do an Immigration 101 just because it is complicated. At the end of the day, I think the biggest misconception that exists about federal immigration law is that you can just quote unquote get in line. Most people who need an option to stay or need to find some way to be able to remain in the United States do not have any options of remaining in the U.S. It gets really complicated. Again, that's why we have a whole Immigration 101 presentation we do. Immigration law, federal immigration law is incredibly flawed. It benefits very few people. The majority, and I'll try not to go on too long about this, I know my time is very limited. If people want to find a way to stay in the United States permanently and lawfully, they actually have to find a way to obtain what's called their lawful permanent residency, most commonly known as a green card. That often gets confused with citizenship, but they are two different things. And if you have immigrated to the US and you want to be a citizen, you actually need to get your residency first. Just really quickly, the most common way that people get their residency in the US is through a family member, but sometimes that takes between 20 and 30 years, yet that is the most common way. It depends on a number of factors. Sometimes it only takes maybe like 2, 3, or 4 years, but for many people it can take decades or longer, and that is the most common way that people get their residency. People also come as refugees sometimes, and if you've come as a refugee and you otherwise don't you otherwise qualify, you eventually can apply for your residency. Some people seek asylum in our country, but it's very, very difficult to win asylum in the United States, to obtain asylum in the United States. But if you are granted asylum, you eventually can apply for your residency. There are some other visas available for victims like of human trafficking or crimes. Those are called like T visas and U visas. There's caps on those every year. So even if you qualify, like for a U visa, for example, you might be looking at this point like 10 to 20 years before you can even apply for your green card. So the options are incredibly limited, and we even have a lot of people in our communities. For example, you might be familiar with like people with DACA, dreamers. I don't know if you've heard of like dreamers who came to the U.S. when they were young. A lot of those people, there are a lot of people who have temporary benefits like that offers them temporary protection, but it's not permanent, and they can't even get their residency even if they've been here for years and years and years. So I don't know if anything I just said makes sense, but the point is very few people are actually able to benefit from our immigration system, from our laws. They benefit very few people, and that's the problem. So I would say when you hear people say, well, they've been here long enough, like why didn't they just fix their status? Most of the time it's because they haven't been able to, despite their efforts and despite very badly wanting to do it. So sorry if I went off on a tangent. That was way too much.
You also didn't mention the cost, because there's an enormous cost with fixing your status, and it can run into the thousands and thousands of dollars. And so that's another barrier for seeking the kind of professional help that you need to acquire your visas and your green cards and your approvals. It's a challenge financially.
Definitely, and costs vary, but for, if you do even qualify to apply for your permanent residency, your green card at some point in your life, you're looking at spending thousands of dollars on filing fees alone and other costs to the U.S. government. Not to mention if you're trying to seek legal representation to help you, because they're such complicated processes. If you're paying a private attorney, you might be paying a lot of money, which is why folks like us exist, so we can offer high quality, low cost and free immigration legal services. And we do have very nominal fees for some of our services, others are free. But even with our nominal fees, most people on our sliding fee scale don't qualify to have to pay, and we certainly don't ever deny services to anyone for inability to pay.
Would you say most of your work is particularly putting on these clinics to, for our refugees and our immigrants, to teach them what they can and cannot do, and also applying for green cards when they're able to?
So, because we're fortunate to have these two branches of our program, the direct legal services and our organizing advocacy, I would say, I don't know if I can even say most of our work. We do so much of everything you just said. It's so important for people to understand their rights, but also helping them understand this is what the process looks like. This is what's going to happen next. This is what you need to do to make sure you remain in compliance with our laws in the United States. Don't violate those, because that could affect your immigration status in the future. So it's very broad, and I don't know that was a perfect answer to your question, but I think, yeah, and we'll talk more about our legal services.
Okay.
So I had mentioned, again, like some of our responses and really beefing up like community response teams, including our legal team that is constantly preparing to try and get ready for when, if and when a raid happens in our state. We've been offering protective accompaniment at those ICE check-ins that my colleague Barbie discussed. She talked about people having to check in with ICE. So we've got community volunteers as well as some of our advocacy staff who have been showing up at the federal building, offering just to be there as a source of support for people who are checking in. So that is something that we did under AFSC in the past before we joined to form IOMMJ, and we've been doing that again.
So during the check-ins, could that be they're checking in because they're on that pathway that you've talked about, that 10 to 20-year pathway, and so they're checking in during the process?
So it could be that somebody who's checking in is on that path. again, most people are probably not just because they don't have a family member who could file a petition for them, or they don't qualify for any other immigration benefits. It could be. I would say,
Smaller percentage though.
right. So you could be here and you could qualify for something, but it also might be that you are in removal proceedings because you crossed the border at some point in your life and you had an interaction with a Customs and Border Patrol officer or ICE, and you're placed in removal proceedings, but you were released and allowed to pursue your case, but you might not have a case. It gets very complicated. It also could be that you're already here, you might have something in process, but you wound up in removal proceedings anyway. And when I say removal, I'm talking about deportation proceedings, sorry. It's hard to answer those types of questions just because every case is unique and because immigration law is so complicated. That's why we are lucky to have Barbie on our staff who can really, if she does have a consultation with somebody who is in removal proceedings and has hearings coming up, can work to figure out, do you have any options that we can try to pursue in order for you to stay? But like I said, even if there is an option, those could take years and years and years. So in most cases, there might not be an option, but even if there is, again, could take decades. So it's not an immediate solution. One other thing I was going to mention, I guess I already talked about protective accompaniment. That's what I was just saying, that we've been offering that at ICE check-ins. We are just available along with some trained volunteers if anybody just even needs help going into the federal building. Where do I go? Or it's just nice to have that moral support sometimes. We've been trying to be an active presence and just let people know that we are available. So you can see us outside the federal building right over here on Tuesday mornings doing that as we're able to. So my colleague Ann will come up now. We'll touch a little bit more on our legal services that we offer. Thank you.
Hi, and I will try to be brief, but I want to check with you on time. Do I have a couple minutes?
You bet.
Okay, thank you so much. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the legal services that we provide. We've been talking a lot about ICE activities and detention, and that is definitely the source of a lot of things that have been changing in the past year in immigration, the practice of immigration law. But there also is a huge need for services, legal services, for people who are not in detention, who are not necessarily in the deportation process yet, but are here in the United States, here in Iowa, and have remedies being ways that they would be able to regularize their status. So you had asked, and I think Jody mentioned, but I'm just going to repeat really quickly, main three ways that people can get regular or a green card status, a permanent status in the United States would be through their family members, through their employers, and through humanitarian programs such as refugees, asylees, U visas, which is this program for victims of crime, and a couple of other humanitarian programs. The vast majority of those folks do come through family-based. That's about 65% of people who can get green cards every year. About 14% through their employers, another 14% through these humanitarian programs. Iowa MMJ serves about 2,000 people a year. We are statewide, but you know, the way the population in Iowa works and the fact that we're located in Polk County, the majority of folks that we help are here in Polk County. When we say we serve about 2,000 people a year in our legal program, you have to understand that some of these programs take a very, very long time. So for instance, a U visa right now is taking about 20 years to process. So that means about half of the folks that we serve every year are people that have continuing cases. So now I just want to talk briefly about new people that we take in every year. So we have a lot of people who have ongoing cases, but of course there are always new needs. In 2024, we took in over 1,000 new clients. That's for the whole year. And in the sense that the demand for our services grows, the demand for our services has always been overwhelming, but it has even grown in the past year. Just in the past 9 months, so the first 3 quarters of 2025, we've already taken in 1,200 clients, and we have another quarter of the year to go. We definitely have changed our procedures to be able to help as many people as possible because the risk has become so much greater for them. It's important to know of, as I said, we've taken in 1,200 clients already this year, but there are at least another 700 people who have applied for our services that we have had to turn away because we simply don't have the capacity for everyone. And also, I will say that our staff is getting exhausted. So although we are stretching ourselves to the limit to try to serve the public as much as we can, we definitely need to find better ways to take care of ourselves and to fund the services that we're providing. But some of the things that we have done, we have leveraged every volunteer and community group that we can to offer group processing clinics. So that means we bring people in, we train them, they work under the supervision of an attorney or of an accredited representative, but we have been helping people with advice and counsel, simply giving them information, like you are saying. What are their possibilities? Maybe they are here on a temporary program, like temporary protected status, or they just came as a refugee and they need to get their green card. These are all questions that obviously people have, and those are things that we try to help them at least with the information of what they need to do. We also have offered weekly clinics to help people with very straightforward kinds of cases like children's citizenship, green card renewals, DACA renewals. We've really upped our work working with refugees who need to adjust their status. And what that means is refugees, when they come to the United States, they are allowed in legally, but after their first year, they have to apply for their green card. We think that 3,000 to 5,000 refugees have been resettled in Iowa in 2025, is that it, or 2024? Maybe 2024. In 2024, we offered refugee adjustment services to about 150 people. In 2025, we have already served over 500 people. We're doing that also through training volunteers, getting group clinics, trying to help as many people as we can. As we talked about, again, we've talked about some of the things that are happening that are hurting our refugee, or that are hurting our immigrant population in Polk County because they are being detained much more than they've ever had. But there are a lot of other kinds of policy changes that have really affected people. For instance, the fact that refugees will no longer qualify for Medicaid or SNAP services. So that's one of the reasons that we are really rushing to try to get them their green cards as soon as possible. It turns out that they still will not qualify for all of the services that they have in the past, but getting them their green card does put them in a more stable and a safer situation, and it does allow their children to receive some of the services that also American citizen children receive in Iowa. And as you've heard a lot, we are very happy that we have been able to work on detention issues. This is for the first time that Iowa MMJ has been able to help people in detention, and there are a lot more people in detention. So that's been a really important part for us to fill. Please.
So you said, you went up from 125 in 2024, and you've already served over 500 in 2025. My question is this: if they're already in the process, are you seeing that increased numbers? Because if you've been here for 10 years and you haven't been bothered, but now you're like, oh, I think I'm going to start the process to get a status change, right? So you go into the process for that. Is that way better for you if you are detained? They're like, oh, okay, well, you're starting through the process, or?
I mean, I would say it's never better for you to be detained.
No, but if you are,
right.
does that weigh in your favor that, hey, I'm working through the process? I'm curious if that's part of the uptick that you're seeing in the numbers, that is a mitigating factor that people.
Absolutely. I mean, I would say, again, our services have always been very needed, and all immigrants who are in a precarious status, say in a temporary status or undocumented, have always been wanting to regularize their status. They've always been wanting to get to a stable status, such as having a green card or getting U.S. citizenship. So I don't think people are waiting to be detained in order to apply for their status. And so refugees, for instance, are not, unless they get into criminal trouble, they're not in danger of detention, but they do have these processes that they need to get through. Family members, it has been over the years, ever since 1996, which is a long time, it's been very, very difficult for family members to get through the family process because there are so many barriers to that. There are some very individual cases where if you are detained, you might be able to then apply for an emergency benefit that you wouldn't qualify for otherwise. But most of these folks are trying to regularize their status before they get into any risk of being detained. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, that would be the
Sure.
question, like, is that why you're seeing the increase of numbers? Because-
Yeah, and also because people are very afraid. So a lot of people that we're seeing and we're giving advice and counsel to, unfortunately, there's not a lot we can do for them, but they are terrified. I have a family, and this is a family who we can actually help, and we are helping. They are from Afghanistan. They came over with the humanitarian airlifts in 2021. Their children are terrified of going to school because they have heard of Afghans getting arrested by ICE. This family is not in danger of getting arrested, but their stress level is through the roof. And so we have lots of people like that, even if they are in the process, even if they are in a safe status right now, they are so afraid. And they are coming to us and asking questions and trying to get help as quickly as they can.
Sorry, but that led me to another question.
Sure.
So if a child comes into this process while they're at school,
Yeah,
I mean, well, you need to have an attorney or an adult or their parent. I mean,
Right.
the parents probably don't want to come in, and so is that part of your role? You go and help, is there a child advocate? I guess is,
I mean, we don't have a specific child advocate, but we do work with unaccompanied minors quite a bit.
Okay.
And we do work with, I think people feel pretty safe to come into our office. So we do work with parents who are looking out for the best interests of their children as well.
okay. I mean, I have 4 kids, so I've always told them, like, if you get in trouble, you ask for your attorney, like, someone's gonna come,
Right.
needs to come in, don't get questioned without them, and so I
Right.
can see where that's more difficult in that situation. So
Yeah,
it's good.
absolutely, absolutely. And we're not enough, but when children do get into trouble, if we can help, we're there helping them on the immigration part of that.
Good. Thank you.
Okay,
And thanks for your presentation. I did get to see you at Plymouth Church.
Oh, okay.
When you spoke to Forum, so you're a busy person with busy staff, and greatly appreciate all your efforts on behalf of folks seeking to normalize their status and move forward.
thank you so much. I'm
Thank
going to
you.
pass it over to Susie.
And I will be quick, just a couple of minutes here, but I start out with a thank you to all of you, because I know earlier in the year, when you all saw a need around refugee resettlement services, you freed up some funding for those services and dedicated it to 4 refugee resettlement agencies. And so just a note of gratitude, first of all, for that and recognizing that need right away. What maybe you didn't recognize behind the scenes is that 3 of the 4 of those organizations rely on us for their immigration legal services. So we're sort of standing behind going, hey, look at us. Because only USCRI does immigration legal services. The other 3 entities do not do legal services. They do plenty with refugees and immigrants, but they don't do the immigration legal service side of things. So I just want to speak to a couple things in terms of our place in this space. We feel like we are uniquely positioned today to meet this moment, to be able to just serve the most basic of needs for our immigrant and refugee neighbors, some who have been here for 20 years, who have kids in our schools, and who work in our industries. And so because we have this joint program dual model of both the very basic legal services, but also the advocacy, here's your rights, here's what you need to know about your rights. We feel like we're uniquely designed to meet this moment. We, not only that, but our reputation is stellar, quite frankly. We have a 45-year history that Erica talked about of doing immigration legal services and immigrant rights work. We have a combined 85 years of experience in immigration law on our staff, 50 of which is sitting in this room. So no, I don't think that there is another immigration legal service organization in this city, in this county, in this state that has the expert voice that we have right now. Not only that, our reputation precedes us, and you can check it out on many school websites. You'll see reference to going to us to get information about your rights and legal services. Schools, businesses, other organizations, other immigrant-serving organizations, county offices, all of them are directing people to us for information on immigration and basic rights of people in this space. And so it goes without saying, in this space where we're just managing the daily needs of people who have status changes that need to be addressed through legal services, all the way to our deportation defense and removal work, we need money. I mean, at the end of the day, we are struggling. This is a space that has already been underfunded historically by a wide margin, with very few people working in this space. And so for the health and well-being and really bottom line economic, for very tangible economic reasons, there are estimates that about anywhere between 7 and 8% of the workforce in Iowa are immigrants and refugees. If you can imagine even half of that leaving tomorrow, the impact that would have on our communities economically, not to mention psychologically and just overall health and well-being. So we're in this space. We're saying, here we are, please recognize that we provide a very important service in this space of working with refugees and immigrants in this time. And so,
Do you have a specific ask for us today?
well, I can tell you, Erica handed out a one-pager that you should all have.
Yes.
When you look at the services that we provide just for Polk County and those clinics that we listed out, those cost us budgetarily around $500,000 annually to sustain. So if I have an ask, it's anything up to that amount. I mean, really, the $500,000 a year is what it takes us to sustain that just for Polk County. So I don't have a specific ask, just an ask.
You typically get your funding from?
We get our funding from a plethora of different places. We have a diverse portfolio, individuals, faith communities. We do get some government funding. Corporations, businesses, foundations, grants. What was that?
You said public funding. I asked if it was federal or state.
We get both federal and state funding. Mhm. Yes, our Afghan legal program, arm of our program is funded federally. We get our services for victims of violence is funded by the state. Mhm. We've gotten a little bit of county funds over the years.
So what would be helpful to us, I think, is having an understanding of your existing budget, your sources of revenue, and specifically what your tailored ask is for the county and what services you would be providing with those dollars. That would be, I think, the next steps for you.
If you would like a follow-up, I would be happy to do that.
Okay.
What I can tell you is that individuals and faith communities have stepped up in a stellar way, and we've blown our budget from revenue from those two entities. But what you all must know is that the capacity of those two arms of our revenue can't compete with government funding, county funding, state funding, corporate funding, foundations, grants. No matter how generous individuals and faith communities are, they just cannot compete with
Sure.
the level of funding that's available. So yes, I will happily follow up with a specific ask with some very specific, tangible things that we could do with that money.
That would be helpful.
Erica, last time you and I met, and I think a few of you we met, you had mentioned that the refugee, and maybe this is wrong now because things have changed. This was back in June, and I know numbers obviously have gone up from what you've said today, particularly on refugees and immigrants. But just on refugee adjustment, adjustments of the status clinics, that cost is about, for legal services, is about $50,000. Is what you've given me in the past. Do you think that's still about right?
Probably doubled at this point.
Okay.
Yeah, so a couple of things. Like Ann mentioned, folks are continuing to call us and ask for these services, and then with the changes with some other federal policy changes related to benefits and things like that, that's causing the uptick. And so we've been in communications with LSI, with Rossi, who else? Catholic Charities, the other groups that serve immigrants and refugees in Polk County, to talk about how we can kind of help people move through the process really quickly and urgently now.
Wow. And how about the naturalization on citizenship?
How much?
We, in partnership, just the program that we were doing in partnership with the LSI, that is a $65,000 program a year. All the funding was cut from that. So it will be a $65,000 hole in our budget next year for naturalization.
Okay. And then you still are you still doing weekly immigration legal clinics? And monthly immigration legal clinics?
Lots of different immigration clinics.
Okay.
We had individual, and when I sent the letter to you, Supervisor Conley, we had individual, like the cost of these things individually, and all of them are between 50 and 100,000 for each of these particular clinics, with the exception of maybe the advice and counsel clinics, because we don't have ongoing casework with those. So they're kind of a one and done, so they're lesser cost, but all of these other clinics, they start at 50,000 and go up to 100,000, maybe even 150 on an annual basis to do these things.
Is this an email that we all got, like, should?
No,
There
I
was a
got it.
follow-up to
Oh,
our initial
okay.
visit with Supervisor Conley, but
Numbers to maybe send us.
yeah, sure. And the only reason I wiped them out and put one sum total on this morning was just simply because it's changed. When we had sent you the letter on the refugee adjustment clinics, we had 50,000, but since then, we've doubled the number of people in need of our services, and so we know that number is doubled. Yeah.
So as Supervisor McCoy mentioned, I think an accurate budget and this request seems reasonable. We need to keep our refugee and immigrants here. It's a known fact. We need our workers in our workforce. They need to have a way to communicate with people. We need them in our schools. We need them in our community, and you folks are here to help them. So I'm hoping that you can get that information to them and propose a resolution on for the next couple weeks. So the sooner you get that on, the better we are. Continue the good work that you're doing.
Thank you. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
Thank you all. You.
All right, John, you are up. We're going to talk about wetlands today.
Yes, we are. Let's see if we have this presentation.
Where's that located?
North Central Polk County. You have,
Oh,
it's
okay.
a beautiful spot.
Up in my district? and I
Saylorville
love
Lake
it.
specifically, yes. It's beautiful this time of year.
I-17 bridge.
Look at that. I'm going to kick us off. Just confirming, how long would you like this presentation to be?
As long as you need, John.
Dangerous, hour or two? Just
Yeah.
We'll keep it concise. I'll talk a little bit about our wetlands, and then we'll turn it over to Janie and Rich, who will talk on the backside about some of our monitoring going on in Polk County and how those two things kind of relate together. But again, I'm John Swanson with Polk County Public Works. I am the head of our Water Resources Division, a division that is focused on putting projects on the landscape, building things that clean our water. And to kind of kick things off, I would point off, like, we got to start with a little science. But if you look at our landscape, Polk County is at the bottom of this very important landscape called the Des Moines Lobe. If you were to go back 200 years ago, before all the settlers got here, this entire area, basically from the state capital north, was covered in wetlands. Fast forward to today, less than 1% of those wetlands remain. They've all been drained for agriculture, making some beautiful, great agricultural land, with the negative side being poor water quality. Those drained wetlands are essentially directly causing some of our nitrate issues that are so common in the news right now. And wetlands themselves, again, imagine that landscape. There was water everywhere. Corn does not like wet roots. First thing we got to do is we got to put pipes in the ground, drain it. We got to dig ditches, get that water coming down. And where's it coming? It's coming to Polk County much faster. But the beauty of these wetlands is they are like nature's kidney. They are the thing that can clean the water for us. It is what they do. And also, they don't only just clean water, but wetlands can also hold water on the landscape, help us reduce flooding, and they can provide habitat. So like in my world, wetlands are like the top thing. They're like the thing of Iowa that can achieve all of our goals environmentally. We can bring back the habitat, we can clean the water, we can reduce the flooding. If we can strategically bring back wetlands, that is what we've really been focusing on with what we call our Wetland Wave program. Now, if you rewind just 5 years ago, we'd launched a couple county-funded programs, one of them being what we call the Batch and Build, where we have built over 200 of these bioreactors and saturated buffers, creating a new program that's now being carried across the state and across the Midwest, in fact. Great success. It changed, in many ways, how we do conservation with farmers. We then launched a cover crop seeder program. We bought the first run off the production line John Deere cover crop seeder. We've seeded almost 40,000 acres over the last 3 years. The other best program in the nation, which we did steal this idea from Kansas, they hit 4,000 acres. We hit 10,000 acres last year with this. So we were killing it, right? These two programs, learning a ton, but we weren't doing wetlands. Honestly, at that time, we were 0 for 6 on big agricultural wetlands, and we're like, well, we can't be doing worse than we're doing now. We should start a wetland program. In fact, there were a lot of pressures from some of our partners like Des Moines Waterworks, Des Moines, the state, saying, Polk County, you should really get into the wetland game. You guys are doing awesome stuff. You need to apply these lessons to a wetland program. And lucky enough for us, several of us got to be a part of the ARPA committees, the American Rescue Plan Act, where basically Board of Supervisors tasked us with saying, present us with what are the best things we could do for water quality. Long story short, it was $1 million to launch a wetland program. And that's where it started back in 2023. We're like, all right, let's do this. And we spent 9 months meeting with all of the best wetland people in the Midwest to set our wetland program. Pull all those pieces and then layer it on with what we know about conservation. But we also know, I would say, one of the first things, wetlands are very expensive. We know $1 million, that could potentially only build like one wetland. $1 million is like, that's just our getting us started seed money. The first thing we then did was we developed a 2080 agreement with the state of Iowa, who has large amounts of money and a mission to put wetlands on the ground. And we pitched to them, said, we will put wetlands on the ground on your behalf. We would like your money. We will help you deliver to achieve the state's mission. We also coincided launching with the Great Outdoors Foundation, their Conservation Acceleration Fund, essentially a private fundraising campaign where they're like, we could bring private dollars into this that are more flexible, that could leverage state and county dollars, mission, make a difference, right? It was all coming together, 2023. And we say wetlands can mean a lot of things to a lot of people, very technical stuff, but there's like 100 types of wetlands. The idea is strategic. Find the right type of wetland for the right landscape, the right wetland to make the most difference. We don't want to build every wetland. We want to build the best of the best wetlands. Very strategic. Because turns out there's a massive process to build, when I say build a wetland. This process includes, we've mapped out every wetland in Polk County. We've prioritized the best ones. We in-house develop an in-house concept. So when we go to a farmer and say, hey, would you like to build a wetland? Like, we can show them what it would look like. We then have to hire an engineer. We then have to go through permitting. We then, if we're gonna invest in this big wetland, we need to make sure it's there. We most commonly are pushing for a permanent easement to say this wetland's gonna be here forever. We then have to build the wetland. And then we have to make sure it's getting taken care of. This process we go through on average is about 2 years. So 2 years from we've found a wetland to we have built a wetland. A very long, expensive, slow government process that we are on a mission to speed up, but it is not a simple process. And a lot of it does come down to some of our key partners. We oftentimes acknowledge, like, if I'm coming out, I'm like, hi, I'm John with Polk County, I'm the government, and I'm here to help you. It does not get us anywhere. And then if I go, I'm gonna put a wetland in your field, and they're like, oh, that wetland my grandpa drained? You're like, yeah, that wetland, would you like to put it back? And they're like, absolutely not. So we align heavily with some of our ag partners. Heartland Co-op's a great example. They're the same people that sell fertilizer, sell the crops. They wanna help us sell conservation. So we usually give our concepts to them. They go out to their constituents, and they help us make connections. Another example is Polk Soil and Water Conservation District, a long-standing face of conservation to farmers. To be honest, it coming from Polk County is somewhat unnatural. Those two partners help us bridge that gap. We also do strategically look upstream of ourselves. Even weirder for Polk County to go up into Boone County, and they will say, why are we up here? Well, we're up here for a very strategic reason, but we got to bridge through that gap, and we do it very strategically. By the end of the day, what have the results been? I mentioned 0 for 6 3 years ago. As of today, standing here right now, we've constructed 15 wetlands, and we have, I don't know what the number is as of today, over 25 in that design, in that 2-year process. In fact, we've actually had to pause our outreach coordinators because we don't want to lose our quality just because we have a huge quantity of projects. So I would say it's been an astounding success. We are the only county in the state that has a program like this. There are a lot of counties calling us, asking how we're doing it. We're still refining our process, but it's showing all the indicators of what we want. We've learned a lot of lessons along the way, but it's going very well. To highlight a couple, many of you know about the Creekview Wetlands, won several awards. City of Ankeny, within the City of Ankeny, capturing over 500 acres, in this case an urban wetland, right on the outskirts of Ankeny. Working with Polk County Conservation, turns out we own a lot of land in Polk County. If we own land and it works for a wetland, what an easy spot to start. So this is a wetland that Polk County Conservation ran lead with, but Public Works designed, partnership, working together. Putting back, this was actually just earlier this summer, beautiful landscape for a person like me. Some farmers are like, that looks terrible. And they're like, oh, let's talk about it. We built a wetland just above Big Creek Lake, which was, we quickly found out if we're gonna go talk to people about building a wetland, if they've never seen one of these wetlands, they can't even envision what this would mean for their land. So this was one of our first sites where we bring folks out to. We've in fact brought hundreds of folks out there this year. You can go through this field, you can see saturated buffers, bioreactors, wetlands, cover crops, all in one field. It's our go-to hayrack tour site. Even big businesses are calling us. Corteva and their Johnston campus, they called, they heard about our wetland program. They're like, hey, we own 1,000 acres along Beaver Creek. Could we be a part of your program? We're like, well, let's go out and find out. Lo and behold, we built 3 wetlands out there earlier this spring. But to kind of wrap up this process, really importantly, as we've been getting to this, it's been a learning curve the first couple years. Early on, our goal was to leverage every county dollar with $5. We've then honed it to every county dollar we put in, we want $10 back from our state and federal and private partners. To now, as we're fully up and running, we are working on building wetlands where we are not paying for any of construction. We are not paying for design. We are not paying for easements. We are simply, partners are delivering us money, and we are delivering projects, being very efficient with our county dollars. But with that, if we do a little wetland or a big wetland, they're both a lot of work. They're both 2 years, getting down to maybe 18 months, 16 months. Let's focus on the big wetlands. That's been a learning curve. If we're gonna do this work, let's focus on the best benefit. Let's treat 5,000 acres with one wetland because it's the same amount of work as 500 acres. It's never a done deal. Unfortunately, when you're working with private lands, many of our projects are like truly in a farm field that's owned by a farmer, and they're gonna own and take care of it when we're done. There's an art form to that, and how do you carry them through that 2-year process? It's really, and just the realization is they could back out at the very end, and it has happened. But how do we, and everyone's dealing with that statewide, how do we improve that process? Setting up a
Why would
would
they back out at the very end?
Well, some examples are like the family member that's really been spearheading, they passed away.
Oh.
Diverse family relations, I'd say most commonly, right? There may be, very rarely is it like one person we're working with, but we're like, this is the long term, this is gonna be here forever. Does that vision work for everybody? And honestly, it's clearly like making sure everyone understands all the ramifications of this. And in many cases, we're paying folks to compensate them for lost agricultural lands. Really being clear, like when it comes down to the legal agreements, did we set the groundwork for when the legal agreement is in front of them that they really feel comfortable to sign it?
Got it. Thank you.
Yes. We've made some changes internally at the county. A couple years ago, we did set up what I call our revolving fund, which is essentially a way for us to front the money for construction, giving us time to recuperate those costs through grants and partners. But our current fund, we anticipate about up to $3 million out every quarter, that then we recuperate those costs with those partner agreements, very complex in nature, but giving us the ability to front money and essentially get that money back in the bank for the next quarter to keep building our projects.
So about 12 million a year?
So the 3 million at the end of the year, that 3 million is completely back in the accounts.
3 million is how it's going in and out.
Yep, in and out. And then by the end of when the time comes, that 3 million, we never actually spent it. We don't spend any of that
Right.
money. It just helps us. But that was a big change. We got, all this money came really quick from our partners. We're like, man, we got to come up with a new product. We no longer have enough like in the bank internally at Public Works to do this. And it was a good experience. I'd say to jump into a couple other ones, engineering's been one of our biggest challenges. So like we are currently hiring consultant engineers. You may recall the last couple of board meetings, there's been some new agreements and amendment to our 2080. We've pitched to the state, we're basically saying, hey state, we're spending about $750,000 a year in consulting costs and they're paying 100% of it. And we have to procure those consultants, manage those consultants, make sure they're focused on us as the client we want them to be focused on. We believe we could hire an engineer, our own engineer, do the same outputs for about $200,000 a year. The state said, we love that idea. We'll amend our agreement. We will fully fund a water resources engineer to join the county team for a term of 5 years to get started. So we've just approved that and we are planning on proceeding with the hiring of that engineer to simply be more efficient. And it's just very costly. On average, a single wetland's about $60,000 to design, and being able to internalize that, doing at least 5 wetlands a year. And just I'll end with drainage districts are prominent in Polk County, like many north central Iowa counties. They have a rich history. They're incredibly complicated. Their whole mission has been to drain the land. We see huge opportunity partnering through drainage districts, and that's kind of our next endeavor is how do we mutually benefit through these formal drainage systems. But people are key. This is all about relationship building. It's an ongoing efforts. And we found where we can keep people in place, build relationships, this stuff all naturally happens. And it's why we've been so successful with all of our programs, and we've enjoyed our growing team. And it's helped us just get more work done. And I always end with cute pictures of my kids playing in the water, because what else are we doing if we're not making it so we can all play in the water? And do you have any questions? We have to turn over to conservation. We would talk a little bit about the monitoring we're doing, which I would say is where we always need to improve. Like, are we making a difference? That's the big question. And my hope is our folks leading at conservation can track and see some of these differences we're making.
Thanks for your work on this. It's amazing what you've built, and I continue just to hear people sing your praises throughout the community and all the good things that are occurring as a result of your team and you and the relationships that you've built. And again, hats off to you.
Appreciate it, Matt.
So I agree. I hear people singing your praises if they know about you and the work that we're doing. Are we taking enough time to promote this?
We're not.
And how can we be better?
Yeah, and we've been having some internal meetings, because what do we do right now is we just complete a project, we just roll on to the next project, we
I
learn, then we
love
do
it. That's-
10 more projects.
That's what I want you to do, but then it becomes a political
Yes.
football that we're doing nothing, and we are doing a lot.
And again, people don't know. So we've been taking a step back. We actually do have an outreach coordinator on our team who's been very focused on like educating the general public about urban conservation things. And we've been making some diversions about how do we make sure the public knows about these ongoing efforts. So there is a concerted effort underway to help tell our story better. And we acknowledge that we need to do it better because we're doing great stuff. Like, we're doing stuff that no one else in the state is doing.
Right.
But we want them to be doing it, and we want them to learn what we're doing. So how can we help teach them and just help with that general awareness piece? So, and I know a couple new supervisors, like, I tell everyone, I always viewed when I came to the county 6 years ago, like I was tasked with figure out how the county can make a difference, figure out how we can be efficient, how can we do the most we can. And that kind of mission and that support has helped us grow and helped us just start all these programs and are simultaneously running. It's a very fun, very work-life balance environment we're all trying to balance. But it's like, it's a very exciting team at Public Works, and like really enjoying, and our partnerships with conservation. It's just a really positive, some great things are happening.
What do you think the dollar investment has been? I mean, you talked about the initial million, the 3 million in funding loans, but then you have the 2080 agreement. What,
Yeah.
for the 15 and the 25 in process, what are we looking at?
So the last time I did a full comprehensive analysis was last time I did a board staff, which was late last year, where we looked, it was about our American Rescue Plan Act dedication. So in general, nice round numbers, we dedicated about $10 million towards water resources activities, water quality. We've turned that 10 million into approximately 65 million.
So there's been misinformation out there that's been propagated in whatever way about whether or not we're $400,000 shy of whatever, right? But they're spending hours focusing on that. No one's focusing on the $65 million that we've been putting out in the landscape. That's frustrating.
They're really
It's frustrating
unfortunate.
that the lies are winning.
The unfortunate side,
The lies here. Everybody knows that the match money, that we spend 10 million to get 65 million, and we touted that all throughout last year.
But it's not the
And you did-
focus.
And you did even a presentation about that, I think.
we've done, the unfortunate side is statewide, we have a lot of work to do. Polk County is right now, and you can ask anybody in our work, shining example of doing great things. But the state does tout us as like these great things, but we're only one county. We need more counties to do more of this. So there's just two sides, and sometimes some of the environmentalists, sometimes they turn on us and they'll turn, like commonly if you Google saturated buffer in Polk County, there's several articles about how saturated buffers are not good things.
Right.
And very clear, saturated buffers are one tool of many tools that they are not the same, but some folks do tout it as like we're winning the statewide battle because of saturated buffers. Not true. So it's just this conversation of there's a lot of misinformation, and we have a lot more work to do, and that's why we really focus on get more done, be more efficient. But there's just a lot of headlines out there right now, and it's been painful for us as staff too. Reading some of those headlines are very hurtful, but we're like, hey, let's just keep working and
No, and I appreciate that. I want the work done, but if we can help team with you at some
Yeah.
point to tell about the work that we're doing, I think that's unfortunately equally as important.
totally.
So, thank you so much for your time. And by the way, I love the picture of the kids at the end.
Oh yeah.
Good morning. We'll be as brief as possible. Rich Leopold, Director of Polk County Conservation. I have with me today Jenny Malcolmson. She's our Water Quality Monitoring Coordinator. So just an introduction, we, like Jonathan was saying there, we have leading the way, one of the biggest programs in the state when it comes to wetland. We also have in Polk County the best water quality monitoring program in the state by far. We do more monitoring than the DNR does. So you're going to hear briefly a couple of those things today. If you have questions or you want more details, we've got way more information than you'd ever want. But I'm going to turn it over to Jenny, who's going to go through some of our program.
Thank you for having me. I'm Jenny Malcolmson. I'm the coordinator for the program. We have several different endeavors around the water quality monitoring program. Most of our efforts are this program. One of the first things we did was create a mission for the program itself to monitor the health of the streams throughout the Polk County in order to bring awareness to potential issues while facilitating steps towards solutions for improved water quality. The goals of our program included establishing trends and tracks and tracking those changes, identifying areas of concern, provide red flag network, increase public understanding. So our program started in 2015. The first year we did it all with Polk County Conservation Board staff. We had 32 sites. All of that information was then uploaded to the DNR's Iowa Water Program, which was eliminated the next year in 2016. At the same time, we were doubling the number of sites by inviting partners. The city partners are often doing monitoring as well. We invited them to participate in our program, and we increased our number of sites from 32 to 70. And we also had to figure out where to put our monitoring data. So we upload to the EPA now. The third year, we added volunteers. We are in the process of trying to get each site to be monitored twice a month with not just our staff and city staff, but also with volunteers. So the first week, the goal is to have volunteers do all of the first week monitoring, and the third week monitoring would be continued as normal. So that's our effort. We're getting close. And we also have lots of data requests. Throughout the years, I get requests from engineers and from cities, and they use the information for their MS4 permits and also from universities. And as Rich said, we are the largest in the state, and I've had county conservation boards and universities and other entities seek information about how we started our program and what not to do and what to do and things like that. So it's been an exciting process. So what have we learned since we are now getting into our 10th year? We just completed our 10th year in September. We know that our data can show the effectiveness of conservation practices that we put in place. We have lots of requests for our data, as well as people are looking for the information online at the EPA's website. We have a really great, strong volunteer involvement. We are now seeing and can show that we have some overall trends in Polk County water quality. And we also have a red flag system that has shown some significant issues that have been resolved. So we'll go through a couple of the red flags that we've had in the past years. The process of a red flag is our field monitor out in the field. They see something that's unusual they're concerned about, so they report that to me through pictures and other, and an email or a text message. And then I evaluate that, and the ones that are of concern, we will report to the DNR field office, and then they can follow through as needed. One of these was a 4-mile creek up in near Alleman. Our field monitor was out in the creek doing regular monitoring and found a white wash flowing downstream. This was reported to the DNR. DNR followed up and found that the neighbor's sink in the basement was going directly to the creek. And so they've reached out to the homeowner and took care of that. Another one was Yater Creek. We have some really active volunteers in Yater Creek area, and they were very familiar with this creek and had been there recently during the drought in 2023. And all of a sudden there was a lot of water that hadn't been there before, and it was a lovely color green. We reported it to the city folks, and they walked the creek upstream until they found the source, and it was a broken water main. So that was another great red flag that we found. We have other water quality efforts, not just our monitoring program of those 70 sites. Which do you want to talk about these?
Yeah, so if I can see them. So yeah, we got a lot going on with different water monitoring. Brenton Slough, which we're in the process of acquiring. We're in the middle of phase 2 right now. We're probably doing more study on Brenton Slough than any single piece of property in Polk County. As far as Drake University, we're looking at water quantity and quality. We got a major grant actually from Google that they're looking to replenish the water that they're pulling out of different places in the state. And so we've spent some of their money buying Brenton Slough so that we could claim the infiltration rates that happen because of our preservation techniques. The pathogen study, so ICON came to us, I don't know, 4 years ago and said, is the water clean? That's a really big question, right? What do you mean by clean? Is it clarity? Is it fish? No, it's public health. That's what ICON is looking at because they're putting people in the water. So we coordinated with a couple different entities and did a pathogen study. We continue. So with ICON, we are actually a contracted organization. They give a certain amount of funds a year, and then we monitor water quality on their behalf. And this is in cooperation with Des Moines Waterworks and a few other partners. And what we're largely looking at is human pathogens, so E. coli bacteria using as an indicator. When we find a problem, then we pursue. So where is it coming from? So we're getting high hits here. Why is that happening? What's upstream? Is it cities? Is it agriculture? Is it golf courses? Is it whatever? And we try to figure out and then solve the problem on where that abnormally high E. coli might be coming from. Those are just a couple of other things that we're doing. We work a lot with Drake University. Claire Ruby, one of the professors there, and us, we coordinate a lot of our water monitoring with them.
Another ICON monitoring effort that we participate in is I go out and take care of the E. coli samples, grab samples for 6 locations throughout Polk County. We also have a beach monitoring program, collect samples weekly in the recreation season and report those on our website. And then we also have abnormal results where we look at all of our data on a regular basis and look for things that are unusual and do some follow-up with the E. coli if necessary, or microbial, the source tracking. So if we see something that is abnormal, first thing to do is to go out to the field monitor and check with them, make sure that their equipment is all not expired and that they're doing things correctly and it wasn't a human error. And then if that's not the case, then we can follow up with those lab samples. So
How often do you do the ICON sites? And is it all 6 sites throughout the icon?
It's 6 sites in Polk County, and it's done twice a month from April, depends on the weather. If the weather's still winterish, no. We put it off until May, but usually April, May through September, October for the dependent.
Okay.
I have a question, Rich. Back to the conversation we had maybe 2 weeks ago with Dr. Larry Weber, the University of Iowa Flood Center. The 60 sites that he's maintaining throughout the state, he's come to Polk County and said that due to the lack of funds, he's going to need help from, he's asking help from Polk County, Johnson County, and then also Cedar Rapids for maintaining these 60 water sensors. It's a $200,000 cost. We still have about 80,000 that's been carried over from the water quality initiative that the CISRA report. As you look at that, because that funding ends in 26, as you look at that, is that something that you can recommend as an investment, a public investment on behalf of Polk County?
Yeah, and the flood center and everything that they do, they are a real asset to the state, and it's a shame that they are now in a position where they've had to ask the larger counties to chip in for some of the monitoring. I do think it's worthwhile. I think that we can look at the flood center and see if there's any overlap, but a lot of the data that they're gathering is different types of data than what we're gathering. They're looking a lot more at quantity. So they're looking at flooding potentials and what happens with the flood maps, engineering, floodplain management, direct ties to the DNR and sovereign lands and all of that. So their information, and another thing they do is a lot of early warning networks. So you get 10 inches of rain in Ankeny, what's going to happen in East Des Moines? So they do a lot more of that type of monitoring that we do not. Where it is duplicative, it would be interesting to see if there is overlap, but a lot of what they do actually is reinforcing of what we do. So unfortunately, my recommendation would be is that they're vital to continue what we want to do. So
Where would that, so is that all connected up there? Because I know when he spoke at Drake, he was pretty passionate about lack of funding he was going to be able to get.
Yep.
The monitoring systems.
So what has happened, and this has happened in the DNR with their regular water monitoring program, and it has happened through the Flood Center, which is a special appropriation through the legislature, is that they have never had an increase. So the regular water monitoring program has been 30 years. Larry Weber and I worked setting this up almost 20 years now with the Flood Center. And so if you look at 2 to 4% increase in inflation every year, what you have over 20 years is a diminishment of the capacity to do the monitoring that you started with. So that's largely what's happened. It hasn't been cut, it's just never been raised.
The state never gave him any more money.
Nope, it's always been static. And so you do less and less every year until you had to start pulling some stuff up. DNR did it too. They used to do upstream, downstream here in Des Moines, where they did upstream monitoring and downstream monitoring to see what influence the city had on water quality. They don't do that anymore. The state has also had to pull up. The things, though, that the state has pulled up are a little more tolerable, if you will, than what the Flood Center does. I think, as we know with flooding, a year after it floods, everybody says, what flood, right? Until the next flood. So I think that the Flood Center is one that the hydrologic modeling that they do is what nobody else in Iowa, and we don't do either. It's really necessary.
So, and just, you know, I guess for the board's understanding, you know, the work that they do and these 60 water monitoring sites, the value in them is the history of having this data set over the decades. And so if you interrupt that data set, you lose the value of the overall scientific application of that data over time. So, you know, I think that the $80,000 that remains from Cicera plus up to maybe $100,000 from the county to maintain that data set for our behalf. I mean, that's data that's used nationally, but it's also used regionally by our water providers, including Des Moines Water Works, as far as determination on the types of investments they're making as well. It's probably a good investment, and that's what I wanted to hear from you. This is a good investment to continue this for Dr. Weber and the work of University of Iowa as it pertains to Polk County.
Yeah, as a scientist, you nailed it. The continuity of data sets is incredibly important in decision-making processes. That's why we started what is largely our ecological monitoring of physical and chemical parameters, because we knew that the DNR was pulling out. So when they said that Iowa Water is going away and a lot of other programs are going away, we looked internally and said, well, we can do this. We got capacity. And so we started with just our staff and people trained on staff, and it's grown since then. So it's the same thing with this, is that you're right. If we lose continuity of data, we lose a lot of ability to predict and forecast some of our future development, what's working, what's not working, those types of things you can't have unless you have decent data.
Sounds great. Thank you, Rich. Any other questions? If not, we will conclude our board staff for Wednesday, October 8th. Thank you.